My brother sold the business I built with our father, so I exposed him and claimed full ownership, while he had no way out. I'm a 30-year-old guy. And for the past decade, I've poured my heart into building a business with my dad. I still remember the day we opened the garage. I was just 20 fresh out of trade school, covered in grease and wide-eyed with hope. Dad had been a local mechanic for over 30 years. Everyone in town knew him, trusted him. So when he said he wanted to build something ours, I didn't hesitate. We found an old lot off the main road, patched up the floors, painted the walls, and started with just a lift, a rusty tool set, and 2 pairs of hands that never quit. Business didn't boom overnight, but it grew slowly, steadily. My diagnostics and electrical skills complemented his old-school mechanical know-how. Customers came for his name and stayed because I gave them modern solutions without upselling. Within 5 years, we expanded into tire services, detailing, and diagnostics. We even hired 2 apprentices, but my older brother Ryan, he never once picked up a wrench. He called us grease monkeys and said we were wasting time when we could have scaled into a franchise or invested in apps. He worked in finance, bouncing between trendy startups and always flashing new watches he couldn't actually afford. Still, Dad tried to be fair. After a small heart scared nothing major, just a warning, he set up a living trust. He split the shop 50/50ths between Ryan and me, so there wouldn't be drama later. It stung. Ryan had never shown up, not for the late nights, not for the frozen winters when our heater broke, not for the clients yelling about timing belts. But Dad said, blood is blood, son. It's only fair. So I swallowed the bitterness and got back to work. After all, I figured, effort always outlives entitlement, right? But I had no idea what Ryan was really planning. About a year after the trust was finalized, Ryan started showing up at the shop. At first, I thought he just missed Dad. He'd swing by with coffee, compliment the new signage we'd put up, talk about how impressive the business had become. He even made a show of rolling up his sleeves and pretending to check air filters, like he had a clue what he was doing. I didn't buy it, but Dad lit up every time Ryan walked in. He's finally taking an interest, he said one night as we closed up. I wanted to believe that, but my gut told me otherwise. Ryan started suggesting things. We should modernize the brand, he'd say. Rebrand the name, build an app for appointments, maybe even open a second location. His words were shiny and hollow, like something lifted from a pitch deck. When I pushed back, saying we were doing fine as we were, he'd act offended. You're scared of growth, he'd say. That's why you're stuck with oil changes and brake pads. Dad didn't exactly take sides, but I could tell he was intrigued by Ryan's talk. I mean, what father wouldn't want both sons working together? He even mentioned adding Ryan's name to the business paperwork, not just as a silent partner, but as a co-director. I remember the cold knot that formed in my chest when I heard that. I know it's sudden, Dad said, but maybe the 2 of you can take this further than I ever could. I tried to explain that Ryan didn't understand the day-to-day grind, that he was all charm and grit, but Dad didn't want to hear it. Give him a chance, he said. He's your brother. So I did. I gave Ryan a chance, and that's when everything started to unravel. It didn't take long before Ryan started doing things behind my back. At first, it was small emails forwarded to his personal account, client invoices reformatted without my input. He said he was just organizing things, making our workflow more efficient. But it didn't feel like efficiency. It felt like erasure. He convinced Dad to give him access to the business email and back-end tools, saying he'd optimize the process. I'd open a spreadsheet and see edits I never approved, discounts we didn't agree on, supplies ordered from new vendors I'd never heard of. One day, I walked into the office and found Dad staring blankly at a document on his desk. Ryan stood behind him, explaining something in that fast, confident tone of his. I asked what was going on, and Ryan turned to me with a smirk. Just helping Dad take some pressure off, he said. The document was a new banking application. He'd moved our business account to a different bank for better interest rates. And just like that, everything changed. The company card I used to buy parts suddenly didn't work. Vendors started calling about unpaid balances I'd already cleared. I confronted Ryan, furious, and he acted like I was the problem. "You're too emotional to handle money," he said, laughing. "I'm just bringing structure." Dad looked torn. "He's trying to help, son. Don't make this a fight." But I knew. Ryan wasn't just streamlining things, he was staging something. Taking quiet control while pretending to play nice. I could see it in how he'd change passwords without telling me. How he'd charm the staff during meetings, always painting me as the stressed out mechanic while he was the visionary. The garage didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like it was slowly becoming his. It was a Friday afternoon when everything fell apart. I'd taken a weekend trip with my girlfriend, our first break in months. We were just a few hours out of town when I got a text from one of our part-time techs. "Hey boss, why are there new signs going up?" I thought it was a prank, but when I asked for a photo, my stomach dropped. There it was, bold, shiny lettering being installed over our garage. AutoCore Solutions, a division of Elron Group.
Ow.
I drove back that night without saying a word. The shop was dark when I arrived, but the sign was real. The front windows had posters announcing a grand rebranding and new ownership. Same. Friendly service. I unlocked the door with my key, thankfully. Still working, and sat at the front desk in complete silence. The next morning, I confronted Dad. He looked pale, confused. "Ryan said you agreed to everything," he mumbled. "Said you've signed off before your trip." I hadn't signed a damn thing. That's when he showed me the paperwork Ryan had rushed him to sign while I was gone. Legal documents. Sale contracts. Authorization forms. Dad swore he didn't realize what it all meant, just thought it was routine financial stuff. I checked the business registry and felt sick. Ryan had filed updated director information, removing me completely. He claimed he was the sole managing partner. That gave him authority to sell our business, our legacy, to some faceless corporation for God knows how much. When I tried calling Ryan, it went straight to voicemail. I was erased, discarded, like I'd never built anything, and all I could think was he waited until I left. Because he knew I'd never let him do this, I didn't sleep that night. My hands were shaking as I dug through drawers of old paperwork in Dad's home office, looking for anything that could stop this. I knew there had to be something. Dad wasn't careless, even if Ryan had taken advantage of him in his weakened state. That's when I found it, buried in a folder labeled Future Transfers. A copy of the original trust agreement from 5 years ago, signed, notarized, and sealed. I flipped through it, heart pounding until my eyes landed on a line I had completely forgotten. Any sale or transfer of business ownership must include documented written consent from both beneficiaries. I read it again, and again. It was airtight. Ryan couldn't have sold the business on his own. No matter how many fancy forms he filed or lies he told, this clause meant the sale was legally invalid. I could prove it in time. The problem? The sale to Elron Group was already in motion. Once the corporate transition finalized in 30 days, it would be 10 times harder to reverse anything. I tried calling Ryan again, no answer. Instead, I emailed him a photo of the clause. Within 10 minutes, he replied with 3 words, "Too late, man." I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. He knew exactly what he was doing and was betting I wouldn't move fast enough. That I'd be too broken, too overwhelmed to fight back. That I'd let this go quietly like always, but he miscalculated because now I wasn't just angry. I was armed with proof, and I was going to burn his perfect little plan to the ground. I thought having the clause would be enough to stop everything. I walked into the Elron Group's regional office the next morning, trust paperwork in hand, expecting them to slam the brakes. Instead, I was met with cold stares and corporate indifference. The woman at the front desk didn't even let me pass the lobby. "All legal documentation must go through our acquisitions counsel," she said, handing me a business card like I was some random vendor. I asked to speak to the lead on the deal, explained I was the co-owner. Her reply? "According to our records, you're not on file." I felt something crack in my chest. I called our old bank only to be told I had no account access. I tried logging into our shop's booking system. My admin credentials were revoked. I even showed up at the shop to find the locks had been changed. When I knocked, one of our longtime employees, Tony, opened the door, looking stunned. "I thought you quit," he said, confused. Ryan had told them I was taking time off to deal with burnout. It was like I'd been erased. Even Dad looked different, defeated, ashamed. "I didn't know what I was signing," he kept saying, voice trembling. His health had declined rapidly since the stress began, and now he was too weak to fight. I sat next to him, watching the news on mute, wondering how my own brother managed to destroy everything in less than a month. My identity, my purpose, my home away from home. The legal team I contacted said I had a case, but it'd be hard, expensive, messy, and there was no guarantee we'd win if Ryan had tampered with the timeline and backdated forms that night. I sat in my car outside the darkened garage and stared at the new logo glowing under the streetlight, ID. Never felt more helpless in my life. Something inside me snapped that night, not the kind of snap where you explode. No, it was quieter, sharper. I stopped crying, stopped shaking, and started remembering. All the years I'd handled the orders, signed receipts, sent emails, paid invoices. I realized Ryan might have erased me from the current records, but the past was still mine. So I went to war, quietly. I pulled my old hard drive from storage and started combing through every single file. Spreadsheets, scanned receipts, time-stamped vendor logs. I found dated emails between me and suppliers, some with my full name, some with attachments only I had created. I had physical receipts from as far back as year one with my signature and Dad's. Then I remembered the security cameras we installed in the office. 2 years ago, they backed up to a cloud service I'd set up. Ryan had probably forgotten all about it. There it was. Footage of me handling payroll, talking through contracts with vendors, even sitting next to Dad as we signed our renewal with the insurance company. All time-stamped. All irrefutable. I took everything and compiled it into a legal packet. No dramatic announcements. No texts to Ryan, just quiet, focused moves. I contacted the same lawyer who helped Dad draft the original trust and walked her through the evidence. Her tone changed immediately. "You have something solid," she said. "But we need to act before the final transfer of assets completes." I also reached out to a journalist friend, someone who covered local business and corruption. I didn't ask for a hit piece. I asked for transparency. For once. I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. And Ryan had no idea what was coming. Elron Group hosted their grand reopening on a Tuesday. I showed up early, parking across the street. The garage was decked out in fresh banners and fake smiles. Ryan stood at the front in a fitted blazer, like he was the king of something he'd built, posing for pictures with regional reps. Shaking hands with clients who had no idea what he'd done, it made my skin crawl. But I wasn't here for confrontation. I was here for truth. When the speeches began, I walked up the steps holding a leather folder. A few of the employees saw me and froze. Ryan's smile faltered the moment he spotted me. I could see the calculation in his eyes, how fast he was trying to figure out what I was doing there. "Ladies and gentlemen," loud enough to quiet the clapping before you celebrate this new chapter. "There's something you all deserve to know." I handed out printed packets, copies of the trust clause, business registry filings, and time-stamped evidence showing my full involvement in co-ownership. In the middle of the crowd, someone started recording on their phone. I didn't yell. I didn't insult. I just explained. The forged documents. The clause Ryan violated. The court injunction, now officially freezing all asset transfers, including Elron's acquisition. Ryan's face turned gray. "Don't do this here," he whispered. Stepping close. "This is exactly where it needs to happen," I replied. People began murmuring. The Elron execs pulled out their phones, flipping through the documents, eyes narrowing. One of them turned to Ryan and asked, "You didn't disclose this?" The silence that followed was deafening. People began walking away. Some of the employees took off their name tags and left on the spot, And Ryan? He just stood there, drowning in the truth. The fallout hit faster than I expected. By the next morning, Elron Group had already sent an email to their mailing list, announcing a pause on integration due to unforeseen legal complications. Internally, they pulled their entire team from the site. I later learned they were furious Ryan had never disclosed the co-ownership clause. And once their legal team verified the documents I provided, they realized proceeding would be a PR disaster and a financial liability. Ryan tried to spin it. He claimed I was making things up, that I was bitter, unstable, desperate for attention. But it didn't matter anymore. The court had officially issued an emergency injunction blocking any further transfers, citing probable cause for document forgery and breach of fiduciary duty. I was granted temporary operational control of the business until the case reached full hearing. The locks were changed. My name was back on the books. One by one, the employees Ryan had tried to turn against me came back with apologies. Some had known something felt off, but were too afraid to speak up. One of them, Tony said, "We always knew who actually ran this place." Dad watched the news coverage from home, eyes glassy with tears. The story had gone semi-viral online thanks to the journalist I reached out to. Local business forums were buzzing about the betrayal, the forged sale, the public confrontation. And while some people said it was just family drama, most saw it for what it was: a son fighting to reclaim what he built from a brother who tried to steal it. Ryan vanished from town the same week. No calls. No apologies. Just silence. But I didn't need to hear from him anymore, because for the first time in weeks, I had my shop back. Rebuilding wasn't instant, but it was honest. I didn't want to keep the same name Ryan had sold under, so I changed it. Something simple, personal. We became Hayes and Son Auto. A quiet tribute to Dad, whose name used to mean something in this town before all the paperwork and betrayal nearly buried it. I scrubbed the logo off the windows myself, painted over the glossy branding Ryan had installed. When the fresh sign finally went up, something in my chest loosened for the first time in months. I rehired the core crew people who had been with us since the beginning. Not just because they were good, but because they believed in the work. I gave everyone a raise. Not huge, but enough to show I appreciated their loyalty, even when things got messy. Word started spreading. Old clients came back. People brought donuts to the front desk, left handwritten notes like "Glad you're back." Dad came by in his wheelchair the day we reopened under the new name. He stared at the sign for a long time, then grabbed my hand. "I'm sorry I trusted him more than I trusted you," he said. I couldn't even speak. Just nodded because I knew it hurt him more than he let on. He passed away. 2 months later, peacefully, with no more business paperwork hanging over his head. Before he died, he signed over his 50% share to me, officially making me the sole owner. It wasn't about power anymore. It was about restoring what mattered: respect. Family, community. I kept the garage small on purpose. No chains, no expansions. Just honest work done right. And every time I looked around, I remembered. This wasn't just a business, it was a legacy. I nearly lost, and fought like hell to get back, just when I thought the dust had finally settled. Ryan came clawing back from the shadows. It started with a letter hand-delivered, no return address. A civil complaint? Ryan was suing me for emotional damages, claiming the public confrontation humiliated him, damaged his career, and caused him extreme psychological distress. He demanded financial compensation and a percentage of future profits from the shop he once tried to erase me from. I read the document 3 times, my hands trembling not from fear, but from sheer disbelief. He had the audacity to frame himself as the victim. I handed the file to my lawyer, who didn't even flinch. "This is a bluff," she said. "A last-ditch attempt to bleed you dry? But we'll shut it down. It'll be date hard." We submitted a counter with every shred of evidence: the forged signatures, falsified documents, video footage of Ryan presenting himself as sole owner, text messages bragging to friends about how he got rid of the dead weight. In court, Ryan tried to play the sympathy card, talked about his anxiety, claimed he only did what he did out of love for the business. But the judge wasn't having it. After reviewing the files, he dismissed the case outright and fined Ryan for filing a frivolous lawsuit with false evidence. It was one of the few times I saw my lawyer actually smile in court. The local paper ran a follow-up article titled, "Garage Owner Wins Full Rights After Fraud Attempt by Family Member." And Ryan, he disappeared again. Deleted his socials. Moved cities, from what I heard. Left behind nothing but burned bridges and broken trust. He thought he could rewrite history. But history had receipts, and I made damn sure they were read out loud. It's been 2 years since the lawsuit ended, and every time I pull open the garage door in the morning, the sunlight hits the haze and sun sign just re-indanned. I remember exactly why I never gave up. Not for money, not for revenge, but because something sacred had been stolen from me, and I refused to let it die in silence. The shop runs better than ever now. I mentor young mechanics from local trade schools, just like I once was. I tell them the truth that talent isn't enough. You need grit. You need values. And sometimes you need to fight for what's already yours. I've kept everything from that time, the trust clause, the court orders, even the footage from the confrontation. Not to gloat, but to remember. To remind myself what betrayal looks like and what survival sounds like. On Father's Day, I visit Dad's grave and leave him a cup of black coffee, his favorite tanned. I sit beside him for a while, just updating him, telling him we're okay, that his name means something. Again, sometimes people ask if I'd ever reconcile. With Ryan, if he reached out, and the truth is I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated when someone tries to destroy your life and wear your skin as a mask. But I don't carry the bitterness anymore. That was his burden, not mine. I look around at the shop now, the team laughing near the tool bench. The sound of impact wrenches in the air. The smell of motor oil and new tires into feel, something I hadn't in years. Peace. I didn't just reclaim a business. I reclaimed my name, my purpose, my story, and to Ryan, wherever he is. I hope he finally understands the difference between taking a legacy and earning one, because I earned mine, every damn bolt of it.